the ghost of DEC and Nadella's internal prophecy, the moment the CEO gathered his top brass, not to celebrate their historic trillion-dollar valuation, but to evoke the chilling memory of Digital Equipment Corporation DEC, warning that even the most successful companies are one strategic blunder away from irrelevance in the AI epoch. The Colossal Gambit, defining the next digital battlefield, a deep exploration of Microsoft's massive multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bet on cloud computing and generative AI, highlighting the new bottlenecks, specifically the crushing demand for energy and the astronomical cost of training and inferencing large language models. The move from the East DeepSeek's efficiency revolution, the sudden disruptive arrival of Chinese AI startups, particularly DeepSeek, whose open source R1 model achieved Western rivaling performance at dramatically reduced computational expense, effectively bypassing the expensive chip and energy gatekeepers established by the US giants. Strategic shift and global AI supremacy, analyzing the required change in Microsoft's strategy from pure scale to efficiency and examining the geopolitical tension this low-cost innovation introduces, forcing a reckoning in the race for technological dominance where cost and speed now challenge raw capital investment. The silent ticking of the clock echoes louder than any server farm hum when the future hangs in the balance. We are standing on the precipice of an economic and technological abyss few corporate leaders dare to look into. Satya Nadella saw the historical ghost lurking in Microsoft's pristine, profitable hallways and issued a warning that chilled the blood of every executive present. This isn't just about who builds the best software, it's about who survives the complete obliteration of the current digital order, and the move that followed from Beijing proved his fears were absolutely justified. Before we dive into the staggering details of China's silent technological strike that hit the very heart of Microsoft's AI strategy, you must secure your spot in this journey of understanding. Subscribe to the channel right now, and turn on notifications so you never miss the deep insights that unravel the true power dynamics of global technology. Tell me in the comments below, do you believe Silicon Valley can outrun the relentless low-cost innovation machine of the East? The air in the private glass-walled conference room in Redmond was thick with an uneasy silence, a stark contrast to the quarterly earnings reports that perpetually screamed success and record valuation. Nadella stood before his executive team, not to distribute praise for their $3 trillion market cap, but to deliver a somber eulogy for a ghost, the Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, a computing behemoth of the 70s and 80s whose VAX machines once symbolized innovation, only to vanish into history's dustbin due to strategic blindness. He wasn't talking about a competitor. He was talking about the fatal flaw of corporate arrogance. Nadella's voice, usually measured and optimistic, carried a rare gravitas as he recounted his personal connection to a VAX machine, emphasizing that DEC's collapse wasn't a result of losing to a better product, but of being complacent with its own incredible success. The essence of the warning was brutally simple. What you love most about Microsoft today, the entrenched dominance of Office, the predictable revenue of Windows, could become entirely irrelevant in the blink of an AI-driven eye. This wasn't motivational speaker talk. It was a cold, hard projection of existential risk. The executives, comfortable in their roles, overseeing products responsible for 20% of the company's annual revenue, felt a tangible shift in the room's temperature. Their past achievements, the very foundation of their careers, were being framed as an anchor dragging them toward the bottom of the AI ocean. The specter of DEC, a company that failed to pivot from mini-computers to the PC revolution, was now the symbolic representation of what happens when a tech titan mistakes current profitability for future guaranteed existence. Nadella was, in effect, laying the foundation for an unprecedented and painful transformation, a massive internal restructuring, and a wave of job cuts that would rock the company's morale, all in the service of one singular, all-consuming goal: the leadership of the artificial intelligence era. This was the moment the internal culture shifted from confident success to a quiet, almost fearful paranoia, recognizing that their greatest enemy was not Google or Amazon, but the historical pattern of self-destruction through inertia. This stark, unvarnished realization set the stage for Microsoft's colossal gamble, a multi-billion-dollar AI investment in generative AI, primarily through its partnership with OpenAI. The goal was to build the infrastructure necessary to dominate this new, computationally intensive digital world, a project that required the construction of data centers on a scale previously unimaginable, housing countless NVIDIA GPUs, the modern gold standard for AI processing. This strategic bet transformed the company from a software powerhouse into an infrastructure and cloud behemoth. The new digital battlefield was immediately defined by an astronomical requirement for capital expenditure, a relentless pouring of money into training models and, critically, into the physical power grids required to run them. Nadella and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman began to openly discuss the new, almost absurd constraint on AI expansion, a bottleneck that wasn't chips, as the NVIDIA shortage had mostly been solved, but sheer, raw, clean energy. They needed dedicated power plants for their data centers. This infrastructure race became the new, implicit barrier to entry for any competitor. Only titans like Microsoft, with billions to burn on capex and the ability to secure vast energy contracts, could hope to play in the top tier of AI development. It was a strategy based on sheer scale and economic might, effectively trying to outspend the competition into irrelevance by controlling the physical means of production, data centers, and power. The cost of running inference, the process of querying the models, remained prohibitively high, creating a temporary but dominant competitive moat around the American giants. Yet this American strategy, big models, big spending, big energy consumption, left a fundamental philosophical vulnerability: efficiency. The pursuit of scale, driven by the desire for ultimate supremacy, had inadvertently created a massive target on their back, a reliance on a high-cost model that was intrinsically fragile. The entire strategy depended on the assumption that only through gargantuan investment could state-of-the-art results be achieved. This high watermark, however, was about to be challenged from a most unexpected direction, proving Nadella's warning about complacency was a true prophecy. Then came the move from the east, a silent revolution carried out not by a state-sponsored Leviathan, but by a nimble, brilliant Chinese startup named DeepSeek, whose subsequent actions instantly validated Nadella's fear of disruption. While American companies were consumed with the pursuit of the next GPT-5, requiring more chips and more power, DeepSeek quietly unveiled its R1 model, an open-source marvel that instantly sent shockwaves through the elite circles of Silicon Valley. The R1 model, according to its performance metrics, rivaled or even surpassed the capabilities of Western models, but the staggering revelation was the cost. DeepSeek had achieved this level of performance at a fraction of the computational and financial costs, utilizing a technique known as distillation and an intense focus on efficiency at the system level. Distillation involves a smaller model learning from the outputs of a larger, more powerful model, effectively absorbing the knowledge without incurring the massive training costs. This was a technological judo move. Instead of fighting the American giants on their terms, raw caps, the Chinese startup changed the terms of engagement entirely, making efficiency the new metric of success. The news hit Microsoft's investors like a cold realization. If a Chinese firm could achieve state-of-the-art results with less hardware and less energy, then the billions being poured into data centers might not be the guaranteed moat they once thought. The narrative of AI competition, previously dominated by the sheer size of the training run, suddenly pivoted to a game of elegant engineering and architectural efficiency. Nadella himself was forced to publicly acknowledge the real innovation coming from DeepSeek, a subtle yet profound admission of vulnerability. This was China's silent move, not a regulatory blockade, not a cyber attack, but a devastating technological breakthrough that undercut the entire economic model of Western AI development. It suggested that the future of AI might not belong to the one with the biggest budget, but to the one with the smartest, most cost-effective algorithm. The $80 billion Microsoft had planned to spend on data centers in that fiscal year suddenly looked less like a strategic advantage and more like a potential sunk cost if the efficiency gains of models like R1 could be replicated and scaled globally. The strategic landscape was irrevocably altered. Microsoft's immediate response was a forced acknowledgement of the need for efficiency gains in training and inference, confirming that the high-cost model was unsustainable if a rival could deliver similar power for less. Nadella, who had been warning against complacency, was now forced to quickly integrate the lessons learned from his Chinese rival, pivoting the company's internal focus from raw scale to streamlined performance. This shift in focus introduced a new layer of geopolitical tension. The DeepSeek model was open source, an approach that contrasted sharply with the proprietary, closed-system philosophy of OpenAI and Microsoft. The open nature of the technology allowed anyone, anywhere, including potential adversaries, or even smaller, more agile Western startups, to build upon its advancements, democratizing the very high-cost technology Microsoft had tried to monopolize. This was a direct ideological challenge to the Western model of technological control. The American government, facing the prospect of losing the AI race on efficiency rather than pure compute, began to escalate its warnings regarding intellectual property theft. OpenAI and its partners expressed concern that Chinese entities were constantly attempting to distill knowledge from their closed models, essentially using them as high-priced teachers to quickly advance their own cheaper open-source equivalents. The economic competition was now inextricably linked to national security and the protection of proprietary American algorithms. The DeepSeek breakthrough, therefore, was the materialization of Nadella's fear, an innovation from an outside force that rendered a core strategic asset, massive capex in data centers, partially obsolete, forcing a rapid, uncomfortable reevaluation. The CEO's cautionary tale about DeC, the company that couldn't see the shift from mini-computers to PCs, was now being mirrored by his own company, struggling to adapt from the paradigm of bigger is better AI to the new reality of smarter's cheaper efficiency. The irony was palpable. The company that had defined modern productivity tools for decades was now fighting for its life against a force that threatened to make the very concept of those static tools irrelevant. And the battleground had suddenly shifted from software features to the raw economics of cloud computing. Every line of code, every decision about model architecture, now carried the heavy weight of national competitiveness and existential corporate survival. The need for efficiency permeated every internal conversation at Microsoft. The engineers, previously focused on simply getting the largest models to run, were now tasked with finding marginal gains in power consumption and chip utilization, a change in mindset from expansion to optimization. This detailed, almost microscopic engineering challenge was the direct operational outcome of the Chinese efficiency move. They were chasing a standard that had been set outside of Silicon Valley. This new focus on cost reduction and performance per watt was not merely an engineering concern, it was a cultural pivot. The lavish spending and the assumption of infinite resources that often characterize market leaders were being replaced by a lean, almost desperate urgency to conserve and innovate within tighter constraints. The shadow of DeepSeek's low-cost success was forcing a painful public course correction for the world's most valuable technology company. The implication for the global tech supply chain was also massive. If the future required less hardware for comparable performance, the soaring demand for NVIDIA chips, the foundation of Microsoft's strategy, could eventually stabilize or even decline, fundamentally reshaping the power structure of the AI industrial complex. The chips themselves were becoming a commodity faster than anticipated, their value eroded by sophisticated software efficiency. This ongoing drama perfectly encapsulated Nadella's warning: the largest threat is never the known competitor, doing the same thing slightly better. It is the unexpected challenger who changes the rules of the game entirely. China's move was not a head-on collision, but a subtle maneuver around the flank, exploiting the inherent cost and efficiency built into the West's pursuit of scale. It was a victory of software engineering over capital expenditure, a truly disruptive innovation. Now, Microsoft is in a relentless race to integrate these efficiency lessons while maintaining its leadership edge in proprietary models, struggling to balance the massive closed system advantage of OpenAI with the open-source low-cost threat exemplified by DeepSeek. The future of the digital economy hinges on this balancing act, determining whether the US remains the unassailable leader in foundational AI, or whether the East can claim victory through superior engineering elegance and sheer economic accessibility. The war for AI supremacy is no longer about who can spend the most, but who can spend the smartest, a question that continues to haunt the hallways of Redmond. The executives who once marveled at the growth of Azure and Office revenue are now locked in a desperate search for the architectural breakthrough that will let them leapfrog the efficiency gains of their competitors. The conversation has moved from how can we get bigger to how can we get lighter, a profound shift that acknowledges the severity of the threat Nadella had warned them about. Long before the Chinese innovation even became public, the ghost of DEC is no longer a historical curiosity. It is a palpable threat, a grim reminder of what happens when a giant hesitates at the dawn of a new revolution. The pressure is now immense, radiating from the CEO's office downward, demanding a level of reinvention that is both cultural and technological. Every team, from Azure infrastructure to Copilot feature development, is under scrutiny to justify its computational footprint. The cost of running their powerful AI models has become the company's single biggest vulnerability, and the competitive move from China has brutally exposed it to the world. They must now fight fire with fire, or rather, efficiency with efficiency, to survive the very revolution they started. The final implications extend far beyond the balance sheets of one company. This competition sets the template for how AI will be adopted globally. If China's efficient, open-source models become the standard, the technology will proliferate faster and cheaper, particularly in developing nations, giving the East a strategic advantage in establishing the underlying standards of future digital commerce and governance. The technological schism is becoming a philosophical divide over access and cost. Satya Nadella's warning was not merely a retrospective observation, it was a preemptive alarm for the vulnerability that deep pockets create, the false sense of security that capital can solve any problem. China's DeepSeek R1 was the answer, proving that sometimes, the most dangerous weapon in a technological war is not a bigger bomb, but a brilliantly engineered scalpel that precisely targets the enemy's most expensive and least efficient component. The game has changed, and Microsoft is now scrambling to catch up to the efficiency curve. The history books will likely remember this period, not just for the rise of OpenAI, but for the moment the high-cost, high-energy American AI model was fundamentally questioned by a superior, low-cost engineering philosophy from the East. Nadella's warning, once internal and speculative, became a manifest reality, forcing one of the world's most successful companies into a desperate, accelerated scramble to avoid the historical fate of Digital Equipment Corporation, right in the middle of a massive technological wave they thought they were leading. The sheer scale of the energy demand Altman's plea for the U.S. government to invest in 100 gigawatts annually underscores the foundational problem that DeepSeek's efficiency models threaten to solve from a different angle. While Microsoft invests in next-generation nuclear and gas power to feed its data centers, the Chinese model suggests that future success might lie in simply needing far less food to begin with. The focus on energy cost and sustainability is now the central theme of the AI arms race, a pivot catalyzed by the stunning breakthrough from Beijing. This is the ultimate paradox of the modern technological age. Success breeds complacency, and that complacency creates the perfect opening for the disruptive force. The shadow of death stretched across the Atlantic, landing squarely on the strategic decisions of Microsoft, a warning sign that materialized as an efficient, elegant algorithm half a world away. The tech world is witnessing a high-stakes real-time corporate reformation, driven by the realization that the largest ships are also the slowest to turn. And in the age of AI, slowness is a death sentence. The long-term geopolitical implications are staggering, as the US government now faces the difficult choice of either trying to restrict the spread of this low-cost open-source knowledge, a near impossible task, or adopting the enemy's efficiency techniques to maintain its own competitive edge. The race for AI supremacy has thus entered its most complex phase, where technological brilliance from a Chinese startup has become a critical national security concern for the United States. Exactly as Nadella's deepest fears had prophesied, the ongoing internal pressure at Microsoft is a tangible thing, a humming anxiety that permeates the halls of every product team. The mandate is clear: innovate for efficiency, or risk the obsolescence that consumed tech. This constant state of high-alert reinvention is the true, lasting legacy of Nadella's warning, a warning that will continue to shape the architecture of the digital world for years to come, proving that vigilance is the only sustainable strategy in a game where the rules are rewritten every single day by unexpected players. The subtle, yet powerful move by China's DeepSeek fundamentally changed the competitive dynamic, replacing the brute force of capital with the surgical precision of software efficiency. The narrative has shifted from the pursuit of the largest model to the mastery of computational thrift, a strategic advantage that threatens to bypass the American control of high-end semiconductor supply and energy infrastructure, validating Nadella's prophetic anxiety about the dangers of resting on past laurels.